Hi, I'm Maria Thea Harris from Velo Sews on social media. Welcome back to Sew Over 50 podcast on Sew Organised Style. Grab a cuppa and relax with us.
We sold 80 tickets in 8 days. We had all these contingency plans about what if we didn't sell enough tickets to cover our costs, what we were going to do, and it just worked.
That's Karen Lennox, who you just heard. She's one of the Frocktail organisers from Newcastle Frocktails, and I was really pleased to meet her for the second time recently when Newcastle Frocktails had their own. A big shout out to the podcast's Patreon supporters. I'd love it if you could join them in supporting this podcast each month so that I can continue to provide it to you for free. Karen, thank you for coming onto the podcast today.
Thank you for inviting me.
That's okay. Karen, you're a Newcastle sewist.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit about the Newcastle sewing scene? And I call it a scene. I can't think of what else to call it.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I came to Newcastle 10 years ago, not knowing anyone. My husband got a transfer with his job here, and I've always sewn, so I started sewing. During COVID, I started following some of the other sewists around the area. And then a chance meeting, I happened to meet Sue, who is modelled by Madge. I was so excited. I went, oh my God, there's modelled by Madge. This is unreal. And I think she was embarrassed and crawled underneath the counter. But anyway, I was so excited about that. And then a few months later, she messaged me and said, I think I've just seen you walking down the street. And as it happened, she lives around the corner from me. Like, how could you anticipate that? So we met for coffee and we spent 2 hours just talking patterns and sewing, and it was amazing. Then we sort of met again for coffee and decided that there'd be other women in the area that surely must sew as well. I didn't know many, one or two, but Sue knew a few more. So we decided then we would have lunch and just put it out for lunch. We go to a local bowling club, which is pretty quiet, no need to book tables. The meals are all pretty standard. You can eat if you want to. And then we decided we needed to have a name for our group. And so we called ourselves Sewing Ladies Who Lunch, because we don't sew at that lunch. We just talk non-stop, patterns, what people have been sewing. It's amazing. Come home so exhilarated, usually with a list of patterns that I want to find or I want to pick up. Sometimes people bring things that they're having problems with or something that they've found or need some help, or they've bought some lovely fabric. But usually we just simply talk because we all talk the same language, and that's not something that you often find. I don't have it amongst my other friends because none of them are so like I do. So then we chat, and, life gets a bit more excited. Oh, do you think we could do this or we could do this? And so it came up, could we do a Newcastle Frocktails? Of course we can do a Newcastle Frocktails. And so Penny, who is very organised, then said, right, here's the spreadsheet. This is what we need to do. We're having our first meeting at such and such. Who wants to be involved? Penny was so good at being able to keep us all organised and on task. And wow, we were off. And yes, so we had our first Newcastle Frocktails on the 1st of March this year. We were over the moon with the result. We sold 80 tickets in 8 days. We had all these contingency plans about what if we didn't sell enough tickets to cover our costs, what we were going to do, and it just worked. The only problem was it was 40 degrees and everybody was boiling, but oh well, that was just the way it goes. I think that everyone was across the whole of New South Wales, so it didn't really matter. But we had a fabulous night, and we're already starting to plan about where we can go next time, about what we're going to do. We'd like to make it a little bit bigger because we've created all this interest from people that had never knew that Frocktails existed, and from other sewers around the area that didn't know there was groups out there that wanted to meet up and wanted to sew. So we'd like to just make it a little bit bigger, not too big because it still needs to be manageable enough that you can get around and chat to everybody, feel everybody's dress, take a photo of all the dignitaries that we have there, like yourself, that came for last year. And so we're pretty excited about it. Hoping still to have it somewhere on the water because Newcastle is so beautiful against the harbour and the beach. And I think the meetings actually just are a small group of us, a bit small of us, and we will spend 10 minutes talking about what we're going to do for the Frocktails, and then the next hour about what we've sewn in the last week, or what you think you might make, or where you might going to find a piece of pattern or a piece of fabric. So it's just such a fabulous connection. Sewing is my passion, but it can be very isolating. You know, you do it in your own room by yourself, and to connect to other people that have got the same passion is amazing. It's so validating for what you do in your own creativity. Yeah, that's why the Sewing Ladies Who Lunch, we meet on the last Tuesday of every month, 12 o'clock at Lowlands Bowling Club. So everybody is welcome. You just turn up and expect to spend the next 2 hours talking about, or whatever time you've got, talking about sewing and patterns, and then just go away with your mind boggling. That night, I always dream patterns. It's incredible. It's a fabulous group. And they're so lovely. We now have a WhatsApp group, and so there's always something on it about sewing, and that it's the connection with it is just amazing. Yeah.
When the ladies who sew get together, you said 2 hours, but I'm sure there's been a time when you've been all together and it's gone for longer than that. What's the record so far?
Probably about 3.5. And then we're still sort of walking out the door going, oh, what about this and what about that? And then, oh, I only live down here. If I walk down with you, well, then I can still continue to talk. But at the same time, if people only have a short time or an hour or whatever, it's just whatever you want to do.
So with the WhatsApp group, do you have to turn it to silent at 10 o'clock at night or at a certain time?
Those that don't sleep, especially the night after their lunch.
Yeah. The organising group for Frocktails, does everyone do everything, or do you all have separate tasks?
Penny is getting us organised again for next year, where last time we all did everything, where this time we're doing a little bit more of divvying up tasks so that we can be a little bit, use our time better, and we're not having to double back on what other people have done and things like that. So
the fact that it was 40 degrees that day for the first Frocktails just meant that if you got your hair done, it was just going to go wild anyway.
That's true. My dress had glitter on it.
Yeah.
Had a sequencing. My hairdresser had told me that if I spray it with hairspray, that would secure the glitter. So I did all of that. But by the end of the night, the hairspray had all melted. And so everywhere I went, I left the trail of glitter. Sue said to me the next morning that she went home and one sleeve of her dress was all covered in glitter, and she couldn't work it out, then realised that she'd sat next to me and I had a trail of glitter. We could call it magic dust or something. My shoes were covered in glitter. So what? It was a great night.
It was. And seeing all the different faces, I know that you said, there were dignitaries and I was one of them. I actually consider myself one of the sewers who was there. Of the people that were there, who else were you excited to see for the first time in real life?
Sandy, of course.
Yeah.
She is just does such amazing work in the Sew Over 50 group. The fact that she came all the way from Brisbane to our first, we were blown away with that, and brought a group of lovely friends with her, and I hope they had a great weekend. Yeah, that was fantastic. And people came from different areas. There was
Lizzie came down from Port Macquarie.
Yep, she came from Port and from Melbourne.
That was Nicole. She came up.
Nicole came up.
So who else came up from Melbourne?
So Erin came. Erin is
2.sewing.sisters. Yep.
She came and brought her husband who photographed and who did our photographs for the night, which was just amazing. Yes. She wore this gorgeous.
And who else was there from Newcastle?
Jean Bass was there. She's from Jean Bass Designs. She's a local designer who over her life has done some amazing design work for big corporate around the world. For David Jones, she used to design. Now she has a shop here which she does individual designs and individual outfits, but also does workshops where she teaches design and working with fabrics. And they're usually about a week. So she'll do like a little black dress for a week. She'll do one where you make a pair of fitted trousers. You start with a block, make your own block, and then learn how to use that to make your own garment. And her work is amazing. That's on my bucket list as well, to be able to get to one of Jean's courses.
She was really generous on the night with her prize too.
Very generous, yes. And we were so excited that Erin won it when she had been so generous to us as well in coming up from Melbourne and with her husband. So, yeah, it was just such a fabulous night. It was so generous too, the number of sponsors that we had on the night. We felt a bit weird about writing to people and saying, would you please sponsor our night? But no, we had people definitely just coming to us and saying, I'll sponsor. Yeah, I think we had over 20 prizes to give out on the night, which was fabulous. It just sort of was a bit of an icing on the cake, a little bit of an excitement for the night. Yeah.
I think the nice thing is that the sponsors recognised that this was Newcastle's first go at Frocktails, but it was also being organised by a group of volunteers. It was people who genuinely loved to sew and just wanted to get together with some friends.
That's right. Yeah. At our meetings, of course, we spent a lot of time talking about what we were going to make, where we were going to get our fabrics, and yes. Oh, yes, we do need to organise the cocktails, but I think I found a new piece of fabric that I'm going to be able to make. Yeah, it was great. And as I said, we've already started again thinking about what we can do for next year.
So it sounds like sewing is really important to you.
Very important to me, yeah. Yeah. I can't remember learning to sew. My mum always sewed, and I think I just learnt to sew by osmosis from my mum. You know, as a special treat, she'd allow me to zigzag the sides of seams, and that was a treat for me. I remember in primary school when you did needlework, having to learn different stitches, and I'm thinking, this is stupid. I can do all of this. How come people have to learn this? And the same in high school when we were learning in needlework, and because the girls did needlework in those days, you know, that you had to learn what the grain of the fabric was and then how to cut out a pattern on the grain and thinking up. And I'm thinking, doesn't everybody know what the grain of a fabric is? Because I'd always had that in my life. Mum wasn't a fancy sewer. She was a very practical sewer because she was brought up through the Depression. She was very adamant that us girls were given a sewing machine for our 21st because this was going to be your tool for the rest of your life. If anything ever happened, you would be able to go back to sewing. And if ever by chance you were divorced, you would always get your sewing machine. I'm not sure why, because Mum was never divorced and none of us girls did. But it was sort of important for her that this was setting us up for life, even though we went to university, but the sewing machine was the setup for life. So I've always sewn, and on and off during my life, it's been more or less depending on how busy I've been, how many children I needed to sew for, and those things. For me now, it's exceedingly important. Unfortunately, I lost my husband 22 months ago. Now my life has changed enormously, beyond comprehension. But the sewing is a stable thing for me. While I'm sewing, I'm whole. Sewing is still me. It's still who I am and what I did and my creativity. Although my husband was interested in it, it was my hobby and my passion. So now when I sew, I'm a whole person. It's still me. I'm still who I am.
Yeah.
Where the rest of my life has changed and everything has changed. But the sewing is the stable and the constant. So it's just been so, so important for me, yes.
So it's that thread that holds you together.
Very much so, very much so. I couldn't imagine not sewing, you know, or collecting a piece of fabric or thinking about a pattern. If I can't sleep, I'll sew in my brain. I'll do a pattern in my brain and I fall asleep. So, yeah, it's very important for me.
Thank you for sharing that, Karen.
Thank you.
I've seen a photo where you were wearing, was it a pantsuit or a pants and a top made out of jacquard fabric? Can you talk me through that? Because I just thought it was amazing.
Oh, thanks. I actually made the jacket for Sydney Frocktails 2 years ago. And at the time, someone said to me, oh, that would look amazing with a big pair of wide-legged pants. And I went, really? You know? And so I thought, okay, as I'm sort of thinking, I need to step out of my comfort zone and do a bit different. And so I was fortunate enough that I could still get some more fabric and made up a pair of wide-legged pants. Well, they've been in my cupboard for a long time, this set, and thinking every time I'd put it on, I'd take it off and go, no, I'm really wearing pajamas. I can't go out in pajamas. So then I went down to a function, Australian Sewing Guild function, and I thought, well, if I can't wear it here, there's no chance anywhere. So I decided to wear it. And one of my friends took me the photos on that day. Yeah, I've had lots of lovely comments about it. I haven't worn it again since, but I will pull it out again.
Oh, that's good. I'm really pleased that you feel comfortable to wear it now, whereas it sounds like you were thinking twice about what you'd done.
I was thinking, oh, this is a bit crazy. But anyway, it was nice, and it felt nice to be totally dressed, from head to toe in what I'd made, and a little bit different. You're not going to find one of those on the shelf. Yeah.
And it took you out of your comfort zone.
Most definitely, yeah.
And now you're telling me earlier about the type of sewing you're currently doing for your family.
Yes, I'm trying to sew, or I do sew, for each of my grandchildren that are being born a playmat. But each one is individual, and each one is a story about either their parents or where they've come to or their lives. So one of them was combined with fabric from New Zealand and Australia because my son is partnered with a New Zealand girl, and so that combined the two fabrics. One was an underwater scene where his parents scuba dived, and so I did a whole underwater scene for that child. So each one, some of them are pictures, some of them are fabric combines. So I have a new grandson being born, and I'm currently trying to get that one together as well. So that one's going to be a heart, a very large heart, grading fabrics across the rainbow. And it's a bit special because this will be the first grandchild that my husband hasn't met. And rainbow is a little bit of a sign. At the end of his wake, there was a big rainbow. So there's going to be a rainbow across this quilt, this playmat for this new grandson that's going to be born. Again, it's a bit out of my comfort zone, and each one is special for that special grandchild that's coming.
Very special indeed. Yeah, that's so special.
Many hours of work, but that's okay. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Karen, where can we find you online?
My Instagram is Sewing by Kaz. I started that during lockdown. One of my daughters showed it to me and showed me Instagram. It was a world I didn't know. So that was a fabulous world. And that was where I discovered Sew Over 50. So excited to see that. And then see Me Made May, which was just amazing. So Sewing by Kaz is my Instagram.
And that's where we can find you to see both the clothing that you've sewn and also the really special quilts for your family.
Yes, that's where they are.
Earlier on, you told us you picked up sewing through your mum getting you to help her out, and you've gotten your sewing skills through osmosis. How do you pass on those skills to other people?
I have two daughters who I've also taught to sew. They're very creative and do some beautiful work. Unfortunately, they don't get as much time because they're working full time. They were both at the Newcastle Frocktails, which was fabulous to have a photo taken with them and their garments that they'd made. And some of their friends were there as well, which was lovely. My eldest daughter, her eldest daughter, is so interested in the sewing. So she's 6 and is very creative. And she'll say to me, Grandma, can we sew? And only allowed to do it when it's just her and I together. And she'll say, I want the dress to be like this. She came over and she said, no, I want a pencil skirt, Grandma, and it needs to have a frill on the bottom. So we made a pencil skirt with a frill on the bottom. She was so excited. She will tell me what I need to sew. But then I got her to sit and to thread the elastic through the waist, which she did. And I was trying to teach her how we were cutting it out and putting it on the grain and how the fabric would stretch. So, yeah, the next generation is coming through, which is very exciting.
So what advice would you give people who are new to sewing if they want to pick up those skills now?
Just start. Just do it. You'll always make a mistake. I still do. I do have a naughty corner, which sometimes I look at and sometimes I pull them out and sometimes they just go in the bin. But unless you're doing it, you don't learn. Every garment's an experience and you learn with each one. So just start. Find some friends that are sewing or do a class. Over the years, I've done lots of different classes and you always learn something. If not skills from the class, other people who enjoy sewing as well, and you get to talk and chat to them. Some of those I've kept for a long time. So just start, just do it.
Karen, thank you for being on the podcast of Sew 50. It's been really great to hear your story that you've shared with us and your excitement about sewing, because that's really what it's all about in a way.
It is, very much so. Thank you, Maria. That was so much fun.
Oh, good. And it was great to see you again.
Good to see you.
Lovely to see you again.
Bye.
Bye. This episode of Sew 50 podcast on Sew Organised Style was produced by me, Maria Thea Harris, with permission of Karen, soundbybensound.com. Many thanks for the ongoing support of the podcast Patreon contributors. Their ongoing support enables me to produce these podcasts for free. Make sure you direct message Sandy and the editors at Sew50 on Instagram to contribute to the ongoing posts, challenges and guest editorial spots to promote the community of over 49,000 followers. You can subscribe to Sew Organised Style podcast, but with an S, not a Z, on all good podcast apps. Make sure you go back and listen to our free Sew50 podcast archive on Sew Organised Style. We look forward to joining you in your sewing room next time. Stay safe, everyone.